20th. You are watching Now Media, the really big show. I'm Andrea Jensen Bergg. With me, Iain Burns. How are you today?
I'm doing swell. How are you doing?
Excellent. I've got a lot of big headlines today again. Canada set to sign deal with the United Arab Emirates. Alberta's Memorandum of Understanding. No pipeline guarantee. Another Canadian company chooses to do business in the States. Will we be buying Swedish fighter jets? Coquitlam's First Nations now seeking an Aboriginal title over a large area of the region. And the COP30 climate activists denounce Canada as a fossil of the day. So on to the Prime Minister meeting with the United Emirates.
Lots of awkward handshakes with people, and he did visit a very cool building, though. It's like a huge mosque. Very, very interesting building for you architectural fans out there. But it's kind of, he's just looking for money, and really one of the main things he's looking for is somebody to pay for these projects. He wants countries that are cash rich, and that includes UAE, which is rich because of oil, because it chose to develop and sell its oil. He wants them to come in and spend their money, their capital, on Canadian projects. Whether or not they'll say yes is anybody's guess, really. And there's also, there's a conversation about trade between the two countries. That's a tricky one as well. I mean, there are certain things that they would have from Canada, certain minerals, obviously food. They don't grow any food there, really. It's sitting in the desert as they are. But it'd be quite hard to imagine them choosing Canada as a sort of primary supplier of food, given the distances involved. The Middle Eastern countries tend to prefer Russia and India and Ukraine and countries like that to get their food. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard to fault Carney here because it's hard to say anything bad about it, really. It's perfectly sensible to go here. They got loads of money. Like, these are the money boys. These are the Saudis and a few others. They have the capital. These are the people that world leaders, big companies have to go to and ask for investment, basically. These are like some of the most important figures in global finance, global economics. But then you have, just as an indication of how small-minded a lot of the elite class is in Canada, the chattering classes in Canada, the main story here, and it was CBC, as usual, CBC Radio's main news bulletin today, the main facet of this meeting that they wanted to concentrate on was the United Arab Emirates is funding the one of the participants in the Sudanese civil war. And that's very, very naughty and bad. And is Carney going to say no? And is it right for Carney to do a deal with the UAE? Again, just completely out of date thinking. The United Arab Emirates doesn't care at all what Canada has to say about that. Canada couldn't influence that even if it tried, gave it 100%. Canada couldn't change anything there. Completely pointless discussion. But it's an insight into the priorities of our feckless elite.
Well, and there is a certain irony that we're looking for oil money from other countries when we can't get this pipeline through. They're reporting now that the Memorandum of Understanding between Danielle Smith and Mark Carney is focusing on a pathway to decarbonization, strengthening the industrial carbon price, and support for First Nations jurisdictions. But there is no guarantee thus far about a pipeline which would generate money for us, oil money for Canada.
Have we got Timbo? Can we have the Tim video? We love our Tim.
Got Tim coming up.
The Prime Minister and the Premier have publicly stated they're having productive discussions on advancing an MOU between Canada and Alberta. They have each stated those discussions are premised on building a pathways decarbonization project, strengthening the industrial carbon price, and receiving support from affected First Nations and jurisdictions. When the Prime Minister and the Premier are ready to make an announcement, they will to all Canadians.
We'll wait for that announcement.
His voice was breaking. So passionate.
Yep. Well, and then you wonder if there is a climate for these climate action policies. At COP30, the Canadians were called a fossil and not a fuel fossil.
I mean, look at all this. Yes, we can.
Is there anything you could possibly say for yourself, Canada?
Canada really deserves this award. We scrapped or delayed numerous climate policies, sacrificed our ability to meet our weak emissions targets, and trampled on Indigenous rights for all of you. We're working hard to sell expensive, high-carbon, liquefied fossil gas to all of you, blocking your path to building renewable energy, keeping you all addicted to our fossil fuels as long as possible. You're welcome.
At least we got one award.
I think that is the most important video of the news cycle in the last week or so, because it really highlights who these people are. When you want to build a massive project that's going to bring like $200 billion in its lifetime or something like that, whatever it is, I'm just throwing that out there. These are the people that you've got to go, like cap in hand. You've got to get on your knees in front of these people and say, please, please let me do this. These are the people that the Liberals are so afraid of. These are the people that tie up any project that you try and propose in the court. And just look at them. Look how ridiculous these people are. With the little dinosaur. They're just such sad acts. And I've known this for so long because I've rubbed shoulders with these people so many times. They are such weird freaks. And it's just like COP30 is just, or any COP is just full of these weird people and the sort of garbage that they come out with. You know, Stephen Guilbeault, it's not mentioned here in this little thing that I wrote, but Stephen Guilbeault was central to this organization. I think he was in it for like 20 years or something like that. This group, this very group. And he was involved in handing out, I think he gave one of these awards to Canada, like God knows how many years ago. So, you know, Stephen Guilbeault, it's just a little bit of an indication of who Stephen Guilbeault is and who the Liberal Party has chosen to bring inside the tent and make a fundamental part of its coalition. This is how ridiculous it is. Obviously, Stephen Guilbeault wears a suit and usually behaves himself. He is usually sort of civilized. But this is what he represents. And, you know, this group here, Climate Action Network, go on their website. I strongly recommend anybody interested, go on their website, read some of their material, read some of their blogs. When Stephen Guilbeault was announced as the Environment Secretary or Minister in the Trudeau government, they came out with this like very strange sort of guilt-tripping blog where they sort of like begged him and half threatened him to follow through on what he'd campaigned on. But in that little blog, they say, "Oh, now you're the Environment Minister of so-called Canada." That's who these people are. That's who these freaks are, and that's who Stephen Guilbeault represents. It's just so important to remember. They think they're so smart. They think this is such a clever little bit of PR, but I think in reality, it's an own goal because environmentalism and environmental activism has been it's been given a certain respectability, hasn't it, by people like Al Gore and obviously Bill Gates and a lot of these other big boys. But really, on the ground level, on the activist level, this is what it is. And it's really important to remember that.
Well, and as we've been kneecapping ourselves with the environmental policies, Bank of Canada says the country is stuck in a vicious cycle of low productivity.
Yeah, I mean, this is not Tiff. This is not our beloved Tiff Macklem. This is Nicolas Vincent, or however he pronounces it. I know he's Quebec-based, this guy. But it's, you know, this is nothing new. I mean, everybody knows this. Tiff Macklem talks about this every single time anybody points a camera at him. He talks about the productivity drag. I had a brief look at this report. I try to read these reports. Sometimes they're good. And actually, I will say, to defend our beloved Tiff, sometimes his reports are actually quite good. Like, he could easily be a sort of good writer for Bloomberg or something like that, old Tiffy. But yeah, I had a look through it, and it talks a bit about, it sort of explains what productivity is and how we've been left behind by other countries, like particularly the US. Obviously, it's related to investment and lack of investment in Canada. That's considered to be the main problem. But, you know, there are other countries that are suffering from productivity crises, one of which is Britain. And there are certain sectors as well in other economies around the world that have productivity crises. And often the conversation there is about mass immigration, because obviously if you've got an option, you can spend $1 million on a piece of equipment that will increase your productivity by what, fivefold or something like that. Or you can hire cheap workers from Latin America or Africa or Asia or something like that, pay them nothing and make similar sort of profits. Often companies have done that. They've chosen the immigration route, and they've been aided and abetted by the Liberal Party, and in Britain by the Conservative Party, and now the Labour Party. So there are other questions. It's not as simple as just equipment and investment, but the Bank of Canada doesn't talk about that. But that is another issue.
And we do see capital fleeing south. Even Nutrien, Canada's company, have decided to open up their potash export port in the United States, not in Canada. A Saskatchewan company, and they've also decided to do business in the States.
Yeah, well, they've chosen somewhere in Washington. I haven't actually done it yet, but that's going to be worth, they say, as much as $1 billion in investment to for a new export terminal for potash. That potash comes from Saskatchewan. I mean, that is one of like Canada's gems, because it's something that Canada has. It's used as fertilizer mostly. I don't know if it has other uses, but it's mostly used as fertilizer. So it's like absolutely essential. Everybody wants it. You know, it really helps with your agriculture, with your productivity in agriculture. And it's kind of like, it's one of Canada's like elite exports. It's one of the things that we have that is like really important geopolitically. And people are getting very upset about this because it's such an indictment of British Columbia and Canada, the regulatory environment, the environment for investors. Because instead of going to Vancouver or somewhere else in BC, which you'd think they'd do, Saskatchewan, Vancouver, yeah, that makes sense. Instead of doing that, they're going into the United States, into Washington, where, you know, there are all kinds of incentives. It's loads easier to build things. The regulations are just way less severe. Taxes are lower as well. I mean, there's just all sorts of reasons why they would do it, but it's got a lot of people worked up and upset.
Rightly so. And we're going to hear from the MPs speaking out the pipeline, which has also been tied up with a bunch of regulations. And you would assume that those regulations would probably be similar for exporting potash from the British Columbia coast. I think we got a video from Stephen Guilbeault.
Pipeline or an MOU with Alberta if BC Premier David Eby is against it.
You've heard the Prime Minister, you've heard Minister LeBlanc say a number of times publicly that for any projects to materialize, those projects will have to be made with the accord, the agreement of provinces.
On the fossil of the day, Canada was awarded the fossil of the day at COP30.
It's funny that you'd have to watch the whole thing, and probably you're not as sad as I am, so you won't watch the whole thing. But it's quite interesting that it's interesting that he stood there for about 5 or 6 minutes, 5 or 6 real minutes, actually counted out, not metaphorical minutes, and spoke in French. And then right at the end, that was all he said in English. That was his entire English statement, and then he just ran away. And again, I see you, press secretary in the background with the ginger hair. Once again, she's there, still not replying to my emails. Want to speak to you, Steve. I want to chat. But yeah, I mean, him and Jonathan Wilkinson and some others, I mean, I can't even remember half their names, but some Liberal MPs in sort of in the environmental wing of the Liberal Party, they've made some sort of awkward noises about what they think of all this. But I don't know. I mean, this is kind of, to an extent, this is going on in the background, isn't it? The best thing would be to be a fly on the wall when Guilbeault and the rest of that lot meet with Carney to see what they actually think, because Guilbeault's sort of keeping his mouth closed, isn't he? But they are saying interesting things anyway. As usual, they're so incontinent that they've dribbled out some things that maybe they shouldn't have. Like Guilbeault here saying it would need the permission of the provinces. If that's true, then it's not happening. It's dead in the water, because Eby doesn't want it. So I don't really think that's true, or that can't be true, can it? Because otherwise there'd be no point in having this conversation at all. It would just be a futile exercise. But they've also said First Nations need to be involved and all the rest of it. It's kind of like,
setting up
you
more
know,
red
they're
tape.
almost they're killing it before it's had a chance to be born, but while still trying to seem like open to it and neutral. So I don't know. The battle continues within the Liberal Party. It's been going on for so long now. I think most people are pretty bored of it.
And another one battling against the pipeline is Elizabeth May. Yesterday she said the Prime Minister doesn't break his promises. Let's hear from her.
There is no chance in God's green earth that there's ever going to be an oil tanker up the BC North Coast. In case you've never heard of it, the inner waters between Haida Gwaii and the coast of Canada, the west coast of Canada, is something called the Hecate Strait. You should look it up. It's the most dangerous body of water on the Canadian coastline, according to the Government of Canada, and the fourth most dangerous body of water on Earth. It has tides and currents that are extraordinary, 10 to 30 meters. They sometimes go down so low that they expose the ocean floor. That's why there's been a tanker moratorium on our north coast since 1972. And you can't wish away the science. And you can't pretend an oil tanker isn't going to break apart and contaminate the coasts, sloshing back and forth oil between the north coast of the mainland of British Columbia and the east coast of Haida Gwaii. The Haida Nation will never stand for it. British Columbians will never stand for it. They're not just barking up the wrong tree, they're barking up the wrong forest.
She paints a picture. You'd hope the technology has evolved since 1972, though, and that we'd be a little more able to deal with the Hecate Strait.
Hecate. Yeah. I've been watching Mary Poppins with my kids lately. I don't know if you've seen that glorious film or anybody. Yeah. And she sort of reminded me of the Admiral on top of the house there. Just like, we've got some winds coming in. Like, is she a pirate now? Is she an old sea dog, Elizabeth? What a clown. But anyway, I mean, I'm not a sea dog. I'm not the Admiral from Mary Poppins. But what I do know is that many, many, many ships go in that neck of the woods, traverse. Prince Rupert is considered to be an excellent port, believe it or not. It's very highly rated in among port aficionados. And all you got to do is go on a map and have a look at the routes. Or you can just Google it, have a look at the routes. There's something called the Dixon Entrance. Google it. They've got AI now. They've got a good little system on at Google. Just take a look at it. There's something called the Dixon Entrance, and it's safe. It's fine. That's where the cargo goes through when it leaves Prince Rupert. It's fine. It's not a big deal. They're not going to go through the Hecate Strait. Why would they? Again, look at a map. This is to go to Asia. Why would they go south? It doesn't make sense. Why would they go south through the Hecate Strait and then out to Asia? It's like going backwards to go forwards. But, me and Elizabeth May, I guess, or Elizabeth May and I, we're equally ignorant of this. But thankfully, I'm willing to actually look and see what experts think, real experts, the science, and they think it's fine. So it's all good.
Yeah. Well, and it does seem a bit backwards that we won't export our biggest potential for making money. Brian Lilly also saying stupidity is holding it back.
Well, he's pointing something out that who kicked this off? I think it was Christy Clark, wasn't it? Who highlighted the absurdity of this. Obviously, they don't go through the Hecate Strait. Why would they? Again, please look at a map. Not just a big map, but look at a sort of zoomed in map of the Hecate Strait and Haida Gwaii, Vancouver Island, and all the rest of it. Just look at it. Why would they go through the Hecate Strait? There's no need. But the American ones don't go through there because those are not international waters. Those are Canadian waters. But yeah, as Christy Clark said, and as Big Lily is saying now, the Americans do it. But not only that, like all kinds of stuff goes off the BC coast anyway, like all kinds of materials. It's just this thing with oil. This is what I've had this conversation with Jim before. there needs to be a sort of massive nationwide effort to de-radicalize people when it comes to oil. There's this kind of attitude that oil it's almost like it's an alien substance or something, like it came from Mars. It's not that different from all the other stuff we sell. That's it, isn't it? Because they've seen pictures. They've seen pictures and videos of like seagulls with oil.
Yeah.
That's it. And they've been propagandized. They've been radicalized. I know that might sound like a cheeky verb to apply in this situation, but it's true. Listen to somebody like Elizabeth May. That is not a rational human being. She's been radicalized.
Yep. Yeah, we still have no guarantees on that pipeline, but Ottawa is doubling down on the decarbonization and carbon capture policies. One company that deals in these green technologies is Brookfield, and we're going to play a clip regarding the Prime Minister's ongoing ethics screen and his ties to the company.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Sabia. The Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1 is subject of the Prime Minister's ethics screen. Mr. Carney's disclosure states that he is entitled to carried interest payments from the Brookfield Global Transition Fund, essentially future bonus pay based upon the performance of the fund. What Mr. Carney's disclosure does not provide for are the holdings within that fund. Are you aware of what those holdings are as the administrator of the ethics screen?
And he goes on to say that he is not aware. It does seem a bit unethical that one of Carney's top advisors is in charge of the ethics screen.
And I think he's one of his chums, isn't he? One of his old chums, and has been given enormous amounts of power. I think he's the one that's kind of gone off as Carney's representative with to speak to Danielle Smith and figure out this pipeline situation. So he's been entrusted with a huge amount of power. It's very strange. But what can we say? The ethics in the Liberal Party. And I'm just going to say the Liberal Party for now. You could probably also apply this to the other parties, but the Liberals are the ones that matter because they're in power and have been for a decade. But their approach to ethics is it's less than perfect, I think, isn't it? It seems you get these ethics scandals at a rate of like 1 every 3 months or something like that, like one per quarter. Mm-hmm. It's not a good advertisement for democracy, is it? That thing that the Liberal Party says they love so much. Because if this is democracy, if this is the best we could get, if this is like the stellar perfect system or close to perfect, then it's not very appetizing, is it? It's not very good. And then we skipped over Karina Gould complaining about the pipeline. She is, as Jim and I like to point out, she's the one that they retweeted, or she actually just copied and pasted this call to action, which was about landlocking Alberta's oil. She was trying to get people involved in that and like saying, come on guys, let's landlock Alberta. So again, talking about the Liberal Party, I really I just got so many questions. Always got questions. I just want to sit them down for a big therapy session. What on earth is this woman doing in the Liberal Party, number one? Why is she talking about this? Again, go back to the point about radicalization and extremism. Why does the Liberal Party tolerate this kind of extremism? Not just tolerate it, but reward it as well, as in the case of Stephen Guilbeault. Just immensely peculiar behavior.
Indeed. And Blacklocks is reporting that Privy Council clerk Michael Sabia confirmed that he sold his shares in Brookfield Corporation, but cannot say whether Prime Minister Carney did the same.
Marnie, good film, good Hitchcock film, I think, isn't it? Yeah, well, more slime. This is Blacklocks, isn't it? This story.
Yeah. Beloved CBC, I don't think they've got anything about the ethics page today.
I think like this is almost becoming, it's like a shibboleth, isn't it? It's like a test. It's like, what's your class? Who are you? What group are you in? And if you just even mention the word Brookfield, you fail the test, I think, with a lot of people that have power. And even not, but like a lot of people in the kind of ruling class, just mentioning that, it's almost like talking about COVID-19 vaccines once upon a time, though that's dead now, isn't it? But once upon a time, even if you just mentioned it, it was like, ugh, you have failed the test.
Mm-hmm.
But Brookfield has become that. So I feel like it's quite a sorry situation, really. But I feel like Blacklock's almost like shouting into the void right now, because it's just been removed from polite discussion. We're not allowed to talk about it, even though it's obviously massive. This is a huge potential conflict of interest, and Blacklock's almost seems like every week they're throwing these stories out there, and the evidence keeps piling up. But yeah, as you said, not on the CBC and not likely to be, really. So I guess it doesn't exist for most Canadians.
No, and as we heard, our Prime Minister is getting some interest payments from that company, who did an $80 billion nuclear deal with the Trump administration. Probably going to see something on that. And then how are Canada's negotiations going with the US? We've got a clip from the ambassador to Canada talking about it.
Known for speaking his mind, U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra lamented missing out on a Canada-U.S. free trade deal that he says was supposed to be announced this week.
The strategy was to put wins on the board. That was the strategy that the President and the Prime Minister agreed to.
You talked about strategies to getting talks restarted.
Hoekstra told Global News that approach nearly paid off, but unlike his boss,
hurt every American worker.
He was originally reluctant to blame the Ontario government anti-tariff ads.
And you agree with that we were really, really close?
I think we were very close, yeah.
And it was all Doug Ford, the Doug Ford ad ruined it?
I just, I'm not going to get into ascribing blame. Different people will do their own analysis.
But in the end, Hoekstra did give his own assessment, saying the ads attempted to interfere in U.S. politics and try and influence the Supreme Court case on tariffs and American midterm elections.
You do not come into America and start running political ads, government-funded political ads, and expect no consequences or reaction from the United States of America.
That characterization in trade talks aligned with Mark Carney's view.
There were a series of very detailed, very specific, very comprehensive discussions, negotiations up until the point of those ads running.
While Hoekstra was mad about the ads, he also brought up the Trump insult that has infuriated Canadians, unprompted.
I go around the country and people will say, Pete, you just don't understand why we're so mad about the 51st state. It's kind of like, yeah, you're right, I don't. Okay?
Hoekstra also told Global News he believes that talks will resume at some point, with a potential reduction on metals tariffs down to 25%, but don't expect things to go much lower, with the ambassador saying the best Canada can hope for is to match the UK's 10% tariff rate. Mackenzie Gray, Global News.
The ad that Carney, we have evidence that he did approve it.
From the horse's mouth, Doug Ford, Doug Horse himself, said that he was there watching it. But this guy, this Pete Hoekstra, he's supposed to be a diplomat. This is why I find it so strange that ambassador jobs get given to people who have no idea what diplomacy is. Like, this guy was a politician, not a diplomat. He doesn't know how to be diplomatic. And I always get the feeling that he's kind of fighting for his job, and he's almost like somebody in the workplace that's just been bollocked by the boss, and all of a sudden, or like a middle manager that's just been bollocked by the big manager, and comes out and it's like, all right, everyone, we really got to do this thing. It's like, it's all just a bit hopeless, because his arguments are so feeble. He's coming out and saying, you don't come into the United States and try to influence policy. It's like,
there's
what do you want about,
everywhere.
Son? But exactly. How much money does our dear friends, the Emiratis, who we were just talking about, how much do they spend? Qatar, Israel, for God's sake. There's a civil war going on in the Republican Party right now about Israel. And Trump is nowhere to be seen. Where is Trump coming out and saying, yeah, you're right, Israel really has been trying to influence our politics? Of course it has, just like every other country in the world. What's he talking about, man? It's just, you can't possibly be persuaded by this unless you're absolutely You're just completely sold on whatever Trump says and does. But then, as we learned recently, if you're one of those people who is a slave, a voluntary slave to Donald Trump, he makes you look stupid sometimes, doesn't he? Like with the Epstein files, where for months it was, nah, this is stupid, this is a hoax, stop doing this. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, actually vote for it. I want them out. It's the Democrats. We want to see it. And you see these people who have to just do like 180s because they've attached themselves to Trump and they can't think for themselves. And this is like a high profile example of it, this ambassador, but it's pitiable. And it's not diplomacy. Whatever this is, that's one thing I can say.
Cognitive dissonance, perhaps? And speaking of those ads, another Blocklock story, the Ontario government has hired $1 million a month American trade lawyers for help on cross-border disputes. $1 million a month. And yeah, costing us more money.
Just lawyers, really. I mean, what? Should have been a lawyer, shouldn't it? I mean, a lot of people probably wake up every day and say that. They just get money for absolutely nothing, don't they? But I know this is just always money for lawyers, and it's always huge, isn't it? The piles of cash. But I guess they've decided, haven't they, that it's necessary if they want to get anywhere. And unfortunately, it is kind of how it is. You've got to pay your way in, and sometimes that means just giving lots of money to lawyers, and that's the only way to get anything done. But it's a shame that is the lay of the land.
Indeed. And another Blacklock story. Yesterday, a requirement that refugees in Canada undergo a medical exam when applying for permanent residency was permanently ended, effective immediately. It followed questioning over rising costs of a $500 million program that covers medical expenses for refugee claimants and illegal immigrants.
I had to pay for my own medical examination to become a permanent resident of Canada. I remember going to a very fancy clinic in West London to get my lungs, to get my x-ray, see if I had TB, and all these tests that I had to do. And it was my bloody money. But very, very, very strange decision. So that means people who are the least likely to have TB, people like, from Britain or France or somewhere like that, they're still going to pay for it, still get these tests. But I guess the people who might have TB aren't going to have these tests. That sounds clever.
Yeah. Well, it sounds generous, but I think we're not in a position to be generous right now. Also, we're starting these policies where people can bring in their grandparents if they're a Canadian citizen. It's like the medical system's already heaving. Why are we bringing people that never contributed taxes for paying for the system? And, people towards the end of life, older people, they're the ones who use the healthcare system.
Do you want the answer? It's because the people to whom they are grandparents like to vote in elections, and the people that give those grandparents visas want them to vote in the election for their party, and it really matters.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I know it's like I might sound like a bit of a knobhead there speaking that, but it's kind of I'm worn out. I'm morally defeated by this, because this is just corruption. That what you were talking about there, it's an example of corruption. But we don't call it corruption. We call it like clever politics or something like that, don't we? We call it like, that's a smart move. Yeah.
Every day there seems to be another story as well. So when they're all this way, they just blend together. Canada, though, can't afford this, I don't think. NVIDIA's market cap is now twice that of Canada's GDP. But we're a leader in AI.
This company, it just like, I can't remember in recent times anything like this company. Like the story they've had. I knew NVIDIA as a young nerd when I used to play computer games because they made graphics cards. They were just like one company. They weren't even that big of a deal. And now it's like, they're just like in charge of the universe, aren't they? It's just unfathomable how huge they are.
Yeah, and we've got Jensen Wang, Elon Musk, meeting also with some Saudis on that stage, you've got like $10 trillion sat there, not including the Saudis.
It's, like when I was saying earlier about how Carney goes off to the UAE and you've got the elite chattering class in Canada saying, oh, well, what about the money that they're giving to that Sudanese militia? It's kind of like, do you see now why that is such a futile, stupid thing to do, to worry about and to like potentially alienate the money bags in the Middle East when the rest of the world just moves on? They're just doing that. They don't care. They do not care. They're just getting on with building things. They don't care about some squabble in Africa and whether the UAE or whoever it is on one side or the other. They're not bothered about that because there are other things at stake that are so much bigger than that. And it just, once upon a time, that was kind of like typical Western country sort of diplomacy, like foreign affairs. That was kind of what they did. They went and lectured countries in the Middle East and Asia and Africa and all the rest of it and said, do this, do this, do this, and then we might be your friend. Those days are gone. We don't live in that world anymore. And I think this is an example of it. You just got Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, the biggest big boys in the world. They're just there doing business. Like, they don't care if it's the Saudis. They don't care if the Saudis behead African nannies on charges of witchcraft and things like that. They're not bothered. So, Canada shouldn't allow itself to be distracted and be bothered by that, because if we do, we'll end up just pounding dust while Elon and the rest, and America and all the rest of the world, China, do business and make money.
And yeah, Canada is not making money. We've actually experienced nearly a $23 billion drop in crude oil export value between 2023 and 2024. Good. And like we say, we see the Saudis, we see United Arab Emirates. They're all rich because of their oil. I think we've got to stop being so principled, could you say, and start making money.
Well, you said principled. I'm like, I'm all for principles, but it has to be associated in some way, even a loose way, with reality. And if it's not, then it's just like, you're just a fool. You're just a stupid person in the street with a megaphone, just destroying your own life for no reason,
We've proven our point now. We've had the last, since 2008, we've done our share with our 1.5% of global emissions. We can look back and say, look, we did our part, no one else did, so we're moving on.
Well, the British, if Canada shot itself in the foot, the British amputated both of their legs, so they had to go. But they also are completely insignificant. It doesn't matter what the British do. But unfortunately, Canada, Britain, and some of the Western countries, they are vulnerable to the moral blackmail that the poorer countries, plus China and some others, like to employ, where they say, that's why they talk about 1850. They talk about emissions they talk about the carbon CO2 levels in 1850, and then they look ahead to 2100. How they can say with confidence what it's going to be in 2100 or even 1850, a lot of people doubt how they can do that. But they go back to 1850 because that's when the Industrial Revolution was really kicking off. And as some astute listeners may be aware, that happened in Britain, and then later on in the US, Canada, and other Western countries, European countries. So these countries, plus China, they come up to the Western countries and they say, oh, well, you were whacking out loads of CO2 in 1865.
Cool.
Therefore, you need to do even more than you're already doing. Like, you need to do twice or thrice what we're doing here in India or China or wherever it is. And for quite a while, Westerners who already hated themselves and hated their country, so-called Canada, as Stephen Gilboa might say, they were willing to swallow that. They were willing to just take that knife in the chest and say, yeah, you're right, actually, 1865, yeah, we had loads of coal mines then.
Yeah,
you're right. Let's be poor now because of that. Yeah. But I just feel, as has always been the case, the average Canadian or the average British person, whatever, was never swallowing that in the first place, because the average person is nowhere near as stupid as the average member of the elite. And I feel like now the elite in Canada and other countries, they're finally now having to catch up with the rest of the country and realize that that's just not tolerable anymore. That can't continue. I mean, maybe I'm being optimistic here, but that is my feeling, that that's what's happening. People start, like, the elite the slowest kid in the class is starting to catch up with the average Canadian.
Yeah, well, and I think as people see cost of living rising, they're not going to stand for it anymore. Once it starts to affect your day-to-day life, that's when you do start to pay attention.
Absolutely, and that sort of explains the dissatisfaction with Justin Trudeau, because he put that ahead of all other considerations. He put that nonsense, that sort of moral posturing, ahead of material prosperity in this country, and it kind of sank him, I would say.
And I think, like, I was living in Europe last summer. Canada's becoming, we used to be known as like peacekeeping nation. Everyone wanted to come here. Now we're just a bit of a joke.
Completely. Not just a joke. We're a joke not to all people, everywhere. Like in India, the Indians. If you check Indian media, Chinese media, they just think Canada's a ridiculous sort of like dystopian liberal hell, where they've just like are hyper liberal, where they've just lost any sort of basic morality, and it's just like people dying in the streets with drugs, and some do-gooder comes and like helps them kill themselves. Like that's the kind of caricature that they have. But it's also, as we saw earlier with those idiots dressed up as dinosaurs, it's also like the left and the old kind of, the other hyper liberals, even more hyper liberal. It's like Canada's reputation is dirt with everybody, basically. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rehabilitation to be done there with Canada's reputation.
Well, the Swedes seem all right to be selling us jets. Looks like we are going to perhaps sign a deal to get the Gripens instead of the F-35s.
I wouldn't bet on that. I mean, I think that would be a massive statement, and it would really upset the Americans, and it would upset the military in this country as well, who know that the Gripens are inferior to the F-35s. We already have F-35s on order from the Americans, which this same government, or Trudeau's government, ordered in 2023. We all know you don't have to be Stephen Fuhr, the pilot, to know that they don't really speak to each other, the Gripens and the F-35, completely different technology. There's just so many reasons why that would be stupid and that they shouldn't do it.
Well,
but
companies make parts.
It seems that they're doing it to get the Americans to be jealous, basically. But let's find out.
I feel like we're the girlfriend the Americans have already moved on from. I don't think they're going to be so jealous anymore.
Yeah, we're sending. We're updating now. I was gonna say Facebook, but it's not Facebook these days, is it? It's probably TikTok. We're putting videos on our TikTok to make them jealous, and they're not even watching. They don't even care.
Nope. Actually, I was listening to the CBC last night, and they were saying Sweden's talking about being a partner with us. It's so nice. All we hear from the States is that we're, can't remember the words they used, but they're very into the word partner. And then they're also saying that the SAB deal could bring 10,000 jobs to Canada if we build the Gripens here. But people are expressing some skepticism over that number.
There's a very famous, somebody is probably going to know and say in the comments, but there's a very famous episode of ancient history in ancient Greece where I think it was the Spartans, somebody messaged to the Spartans saying, if we beat you in battle and we take your city, we're going to kill all of you, basically. And then famously, the Spartans replied with one word on a piece of paper, and it was just if. And it's kind of, I feel like it's a similar story there. And the word instead of if is could. Because you're not promising 10,000 jobs. You're saying it could bring 10,000 jobs. So why should we, for all the reasons that I just explained, why should we throw our eggs into the Swedish basket for a could, for a minute? That wouldn't be particularly smart, would it?
But we could be partners. And
the way that they've got the Canadian, the aforementioned, the slagged off Canadian elite, they have them around their little finger, don't they, the Swedes? I was watching CTV as well. I think it was Vasi, just totally falling for it all, where the Swedes are like, we're your friends and it's all about democracy, and you shouldn't just have friends, sort of like put your money where your mouth is with your friends and all that. It's like, come on, mate, you're Sweden and you're playing us off against America. Like, we need America and we need Sweden. We can't. It doesn't matter if the Americans are knobheads. Like, we need them a lot more than we need the Swedes. So we can't fall for schmaltzy nonsense.
And China has updated its 6th-generation fighter jets and apparently put U.S. on notice for air supremacy. Kind of will believe it when I see it on that. Yeah. And we got one from the food professor here, too. There's another piece of, what is this one? Something about the beef import system.
The food professor. Wow, this is... I must confess, I've not read into this. He's talking about productivity. This man is very productive. He's always busy. He's always getting things out there. But, he's a great opponent of the current system that we have in place for food production and distribution and, the way that we sell it. And I would not be surprised if that's the thrust of his argument here, is that, once again, top-down regulations are making things more expensive, in this case, beef.
Bureaucracy does seem to be doing that all over the place. All right, now on to our BC news.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
First story is a big one. The Coquitlam First Nations are now seeking an Aboriginal title over a big area within Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam, which includes a hospital. Not good news for BC.
Gee. Yeah, I wonder why Nutrien chose Washington State over British Columbia. I wonder if this kind of thing has anything to do with it. Do you want to build a port, and then in 2 years find out that actually it belongs to the Coquitlam people or something like that? It's just like, that is pure poison for investment, isn't it? It's like nobody wants to touch that.
Yeah, well, even my father's a realtor, and he said there's been some Albertans that are holding off on moving to BC now with all this up in the air. Because I think it's Richmond, the Cowichan tribe. There's now 2 people who own the land titles for a lot of property. And
well, we did. Jim
interviewed
yesterday. He interviewed Tom Dias, the mayor of Kelowna, yesterday, and he asked him about that, about whether there are any. As we all know, Kelowna is Alberta's favourite BC city, isn't it? He asked him about if there are any claims that he's aware of relating to land in Kelowna, and he said no. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, there could be a lot more to it than that. He just might not know. But it's a positive sign, I suppose, that because you would think the first hint of something like this, that the mayor of the city of Kelowna would be informed. And he's now on record saying that there's no such, he's not aware of any such sort of case. But you just never know, do you, ultimately, because it's so flimsy.
And you look at the maps of the Indigenous land title claims, and we're on a lake inside a valley. Those are generally places where ancestral lands were. It makes sense geographically. So I would think that there's some nation that has historical claim on this land, whether or not they're going to come forward and claim it. Yeah,
there certainly is. It's the Silks, I think, isn't it? But it's just whether or not they can whether they can go to a court and get it acknowledged. But I mean, the flimsiness of that one in the Cowichan claim, just absurd. Frankly, you would never think that something like that would even be heard by a court. Never mind win, be victorious. But it's based on this idea that they went there to that bit of Richmond in the summer to hunt and fish. So they were like itinerant, they were visitors. They went there and then left. But obviously, well, visitors, I don't know, they stayed temporarily, then they went somewhere else, then they went there, like, if that's how flimsy it is, obviously we know for certain that there were for thousands of years, people lived in what's now Kelowna. So,
the precedent has been set in Richmond. So we've got the Kamloops claim now. We've got this Coquitlam claim. It's case law in Canada. So We'll see. The lawyer Jeff Moyes that Jim's also interviewed was saying it's probably going to be about 7 years before there's a resolution on this. I wonder if that timeline will move up now that there's more and more claims coming to light.
Well, and as it becomes a political issue, David Eby and the BC NDP have tried their hardest to keep this quiet and out of the media. And whenever anybody's tried to raise it, for example, John Rustad, he's just come out with the usual slurs and tried to defame people and ad hominem attacks, called people racists and all the rest of it, rather than deal with the actual issues, rather than govern as a responsible person should. But now it's got beyond that. He can't keep it in the box anymore, as he wanted. It's now out in the open, so he has to actually deal with it and pretend that he cares about it and that he thinks it's serious. And as that increases, as I'm sure it will, as the sort of pressure from the public intensifies, there's then the possibility that there'll be action, possibly legislative action.
Canada's Supreme Court, I think, has to see it. And then we've got a BC Olympian that was charged in a drug probe. He apparently has become a kingpin in like the Mexican cartel's drug. Quite a life.
Sinaloa.
Quite a life.
So he's a snowboarder, yeah, and nice. The Americans. It's so funny. The Americans, they love to take the piss. The Americans. They've called this operation, the FBI. They've called it Operation Giant Slalom. just to take the piss out of this guy. Yeah. But it is weird. Anybody that's watched Breaking Bad, this is like what Breaking Bad should. This is the storyline they should have gone with. It's the same, but instead of a chemistry teacher, it's a guy that was at the Winter Olympics. But it's all kinds of things. It's apparently he's like involved in the assassination of
in Colombia,
a witness. Yeah, and then there's like this guy that ran a website that put a photograph of the witness on there, and on his website, and he was apparently involved in being paid not to put pictures and stories on his website about this snowboard guy, and also he's a snowboarder, and it was a cocaine ring.
Yep.
Obviously, cocaine is one of the nicknames of cocaine is snow. It's just perfect. It's literary. This is a literary news story.
Maybe CBC should make a little 3-episode.
But then obviously it would have to be a woman for starters. Presumably, it'd also have to be of an interesting ethnicity rather than white. What else would it have to be for CBC to do it? Probably like LGBT angle as well. Though there's lots of potential to get other ethnicities involved. Because I was reading through the list of the suspects or whatever, and it's just like it's a real testament to Canada's multicultural success story. You got like Ahmad Nabil Zitoun, Roland Sokolovsky, Edwin Basora Hernandez. It's like every sort of demographic group is represented in this story.
I do love that about Canada. So maybe you could leave the main character white if the supporting cast is,
Maybe. Although they do have history of not doing that. So, but we'll see. If Netflix gets hold of it, it will be a black woman, guaranteed.
And BC Jobs Minister warns new pipeline could sabotage other projects. They're talking about the LNG here. I'm not sure. Yeah. Not sure why it would.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is just another attempt. This is another attempt to.
It doesn't make much sense.
Sorry, I was distracted. One of our commenters there said, "Surprised nobody was called Singh, because that would make it a proper multicultural story." One of the names, the person that ran that website that I was discussing is called Gersawak from Mississauga, Ontario. So that demographic is in, don't worry, in the production. But as for what Ravi Kahlon said here, Eby said this loads of times. It's basically, what he's saying is, it's our project, like the LNG and the North Coast Transmission Line, all the rest of it. It's ours or it's nothing. Like we can't have ours and Alberta's. That's not possible because the First Nations will say no. And it's kind of like they come out, these people pretend to be in charge, they pretend to be the government, but they come out with things like that. Like, oh, well, if these people say no, and they might say no because they'd be so angry about this other thing happening that we have nothing to do with. If they say no, then then there's just nothing we can do. It's over. It's like, what? Aren't you the government?
Yeah,
Like,
use problem solving.
can't you just, you have a parliament, and then there's a bigger parliament in Ottawa. Write a law, pass the law, make it happen. Like, this excuse is not satisfactory for anybody that knows the political system in Canada. This is not acceptable.
No, I think we got to get the provinces in line. And, in the States, we see Trump kind of swinging around his power. I think it'd be nice to see the federal government actually make this a priority and make it happen.
Well, it's a question like Jim and I have discussed many times. This goes to the heart of whether, as Stephen Guilbeault's former activist group, so-called Canada, it actually goes to the heart of that. Are we, as Stephen Guilbeault's group said, so-called Canada, or is this Canada? Is it a country, or is this a fake contrivance that exists only in our minds? Is Canada a real thing, or is it imaginary, basically? Because if it's a real thing, then of course the leader of this real thing can say, this is going to happen, and it will happen.
And I guess the Indigenous land claims also call into question, is this a real country?
Absolutely. Well, or is it, at the very least, is it the country that we think it is when we look at it on a map and it says Canada and it's all coloured in red? Is that real? Or are there lots of little bits that have different colours and different, sovereignties?
On to the international news.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Oh, I just basically read that headline. The States has added 119,000 jobs despite only expecting 50,000, and the federal government is down 3,000 jobs. Some good numbers.
Yeah, they've had a few good jobs. But overall, though, it's not that good in the last few months. This guy, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, this guy, Eric Doherty, or Doherty, however he pronounces it. He is a bona fide, 100% orange-coloured slave. He is just completely enslaved to Donald Trump. He's not somebody that you should ever take seriously. But they did have a good report, and they've had some really good reports, actually, the Americans, but they've also had some quite bad ones. And inflation looks a bit bad in America lately, which obviously this slave would never mention. But their economy it's like, for all that, after that throat clearing, the American economy is light years ahead of Canada's, to be honest. But still, it's not as perfect as these people would have you believe.
Alrighty. Toyota CEO goes full mega at the NASCAR event as carmaker unveils a $912 million investment in U.S. manufacturing.
Absolutely. Just remarkable, isn't it, really? It's things like this, it's hard to believe that this is real and that we're actually in the real world. But obviously he thought that was a good idea. I guess, Toyota, they're sort of too big to fail, aren't they? You can't just boycott Toyota.
Yeah.
It's one of those companies. So, but if you do this, Donald Trump and some of Donald Trump's supporters are so gullible that it might actually work wonders for Toyota. This might, just doing this thing here, might actually be worth billions of dollars.
You might not be wrong. Japan is enforcing strict new immigration rules. If you are illegal, you'll be deported. If you break the law, you'll be deported. If you don't follow local customs, that's a bit more subjective, you'll be deported. If you don't respect Japanese culture, you'll be deported. This person's asking, can we do the same here? I think we should be deporting the illegals and the lawbreakers, but...
Yeah. Don't want to infringe on their human rights, though, of course. But do we have this, is this a video?
Oh, there we go.
This woman?
I was actually driving Jim to the airport to go to Japan, so I have not seen these stories.
一部の外国人による違法行為やルールからの逸脱に対して毅然と対応して国民の皆様の不安や不公平感を解消しなくてはいけないというのがあるんですね。そういう悪いことをする人は一人も日本にはいませんと。
There we go, moving it up. Start it over.
一部の外国人による違法行為やルールからの逸脱に対して毅然と対応して国民の皆様の不安や不公平感を解消しなくてはいけないというのがあるんですね。そういう悪いことをする人は一人も日本にはいませんと。ちゃんとルールと法を守っている人しか日本にはいないんですよっていう状況を作らないと。
小野田大臣は外国人との共生についてルールを守って暮らす外国人の方々が住みづらくなることはあってはならないとした上で、ルールと法を守る人しか日本にいない状況を作ると述べました。また外国人受け入れの厳格化と人手不足とのバランスについては、我が国は不法就労、不法滞在を許さないと指摘した上で、適法ではない方々にしっかりと帰ってもらう、そういう人たちを入れないことと、適法に活躍し
Do you think they're getting sick of the Aussie snowboarders?
No, I don't. But I really love. I just have bottomless admiration for the Japanese people. Not because of the story, but how funny was that? The contrast of what she was saying and how she was saying it. It sounded like a sort of in-flight message, didn't it? Like the safety instructions. But she was talking about deporting foreigners. Yeah, Japan is just amazing. It's what a cool country. But yeah, the sort of context to that, rather than just fawning over our Japanese friends, the context is that Japan is a dying country. It might well die out completely, which would be very sad, given what I just said about how cool they are. But they've stopped having babies, and it's an absolute catastrophe and a tragedy. And it's also happening here in this country, obviously, and many other countries around the world. But they've basically run out of young people. You know, famously in Japan, adult diapers it's a bigger business than baby diapers, because that gives you an idea of the kind of what's left of Japan and the people of Japan. So in that environment, they felt that they had to bring in foreigners, immigrants, to come and shore up, you know, the labor market. But I don't know if you've seen the videos, but there's been a lot of videos and news stories and things out of Japan the last sort of 4 or 5 years of immigrants behaving badly and not understanding Japan's very particular cultural mores and rules, and the Japanese don't like it. So now they're saying, nah.
They were the country that avoided globalism for the longest. Their culture has been very protected, and sad to see. Well,
the Japanese, that's another thing about context. If you want a historical context, the Japanese under the Tokugawa shogunate, for, you know, very long time, they basically banned foreigners. They relegated them to a little island. I think it's off Osaka, near Osaka, and it was just full of like Dutch people. I think it was the Dutch were the only ones that they would let even on that island. Like, they were very strict about not having foreigners get involved, and they were obviously very hostile to Christianity, which they saw as kind of undermining their culture. So they have a history of being, you know, some people say xenophobic, but I mean, another way to look at it is that they were very insistent on protecting their sort of cultural integrity, and they didn't want foreign interference, even to the point where during that time, the Tokugawa shogunate, they actually expelled people who were half Japanese and half Dutch or something like that, like you know, like mixed people of mixed origins. They got rid of them. They sent them all off, and I think they went to Taiwan or something like that. But yeah, the Japanese have a long history of kind of just saying they're having enough of foreigners and saying like, everybody get out, kind of thing, like party's over.
And they have maintained a unique culture. United States is also, Supreme Court clears way for rapid deportations as well. I think we've got a video.
Fox News alert. The Supreme Court just cleared the way for Trump to deport illegals even faster. The High Court ruled that Trump can use the Alien Enemies Act to send Venezuelan gangbangers to a mega prison in El Salvador. This is a huge ruling in Trump's favor and a major win for the country. After, as you know, D.C. Judge James Boasberg ordered a stop to the deportations. So this is pretty significant. These deportations, Caroline, can keep going.
This is a massive legal victory, Jesse, a massive victory for law and order and for our constitutional republic and the sovereignty of the United States of America. We called on the Supreme Court to rein in these activist judges like Judge Boasberg, who was completely out of line in trying to say that the president didn't have the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists off of our soil. We have always maintained the position at the White House that the president was well within his constitutional authority to do so. And this decision proves that President Trump and our administration have always been right from the beginning. He will continue to utilize the Alien Enemies Act to remove foreign terrorists and Tren de Aragua members.
I liked the technical term gangbangers. Get rid of all the gangbangers.
They love that, don't they, in America?
Yeah.
She's looking a lot more serious. This is a completely fatuous point, but she looks a lot more serious with her hair back there, doesn't she? A lot less silly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Americans are trying to give the impression anyway that they're hard as nails on this kind of thing, on deportations. But if you look at a right critique of this administration, so people who are very hard on immigration, they say that actually they've done nothing and that this is all just garbage. It's all for show. And some of those voices, like the now ubiquitous Nick Fuentes, are extremely popular and have lots and lots of followers. And he, for ages now, I mean, he's not, in my opinion, not a particularly serious person, but people do treat him very seriously. But for a long time, he's been saying that there's just no serious effort to deport people, and it's not going to do anything. It's not going to make any difference. So in that context of people like him sniping from the right, they want to give the impression that they're like, you know, gung-ho and they're going to deport everyone, but it's yet to actually happen.
And we've got more breaking news from the States. Newly released campaign finance records show that from 1990 to 2018, Epstein directed about 89% of his political donations to Democratic and progressive causes. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Chuck Schumer being some notable recipients. Not surprised by that.
Yeah, well, he gave massive amounts of money to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign all those years ago, back when Hillary Clinton, when her star was rising. But he's generally more favorable to the Democrats, but
and famously very favorable to Israel.
Indeed, yeah, and obviously his partner in crime and lover, Ghislaine Maxwell, is the daughter of a man who is venerated in Israel and theorized, at least, to have been on the payroll of the Mossad or the Israeli government.
Mm-hmm. And Elon Musk, why 1 terawatt AI is impossible on Earth. What's he got to say there? Do we have a video?
My estimate is that actually that the cost of electricity, like the cost effectiveness of AI in space, will be overwhelmingly better than AI on the ground. So far, long before you exhaust potential energy sources on Earth, long before, meaning like I think even perhaps in the 4 or 5 year time frame, the lowest cost way to do AI compute will be with solar powered AI satellites. So I'd say not more than 5 years from now.
Wow. And just look at the supercomputers we're building together. Let's say each one of the racks is 2 tons. Out of that 2 tons, 1.95 of it is probably for cooling.
Right.
Just imagine how tiny that little supercomputer is, right? Each one of these GB300 racks will just be a little tiny thing.
And just electricity generation is already becoming a challenge. So if you start doing any kind of scaling for both electricity generation and cooling, you realize, okay, space is incredibly compelling. So, like, let's say you wanted to do.
And I've heard arguments made that Canada, our northern territory, could be a good place to put these AI supercomputers.
Pierre Poilievre has made that argument. I don't know how much he actually knows about it, but he's made that argument. So is Danielle Smith, who I think knows a little bit more. It is interesting. I mean, certainly it's a bit easier, isn't it, to get to northern Canada than it is to get to the moon or something. To like, it's like, oh, I forgot to turn on
the energy back.
That button.
Yeah.
Easier to repair if it's in Canada, but I think Elon is just got immense amounts of ambition, hasn't he, for everything in his life, but when it comes to space exploration. So I think he probably likes the idea of it just as an excuse to go into space.
Yeah.
Have a colony on the moon or something like that, because he's always trying to think of justifications for being there.
Humanity off of Earth. Yeah. Cynically, sometimes I wonder if all this backpedaling on climate change is because we need to generate so much energy for the AI. But
there's no doubt about it. Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that's bang on.
Yeah. And then more bad news for our beloved Britain. Seriously tough economic times ahead. Let's listen in.
I wonder if you think the UK is on its way to being uninvestable.
The simple answer is yes. I don't particularly like the guy, but I was watching a video by Dominic Cummings about the A66 in North England, and they've got this is an 18-mile stretch of road where they want to move it from single carriageway to dual carriageway. And the UK system is going to take 30 years to do that. I could, if I was allowed to build it in 9 months. So long as the UK takes 30 years to do a 9-month project, it's uninvestable.
Magda?
You know, I've spent the last 5 years commuting between UK and South Africa. I've got business here and that venture capital business in the UK. I've just come back to South Africa. Uninvestable. That government is, you know, between the socialism, and I don't know how right the statistic is, but close enough. 25% of the working population in the UK is on social benefits. If you've got anxiety disorder, you can get social benefits. So when you've got a population, and then think about Brexit, which has basically eliminated the skills that were coming into the UK. So that's gone. Try find.
A lot of parallels to Canada there.
Massively, yeah. But like I've said a number of times, Britain is in a worse position because it doesn't have the same sort of advantages to lean on. It doesn't have like massive amounts of natural resources and things like that, and it doesn't have hydroelectricity. So it hasn't got the dams that the ancestors built. It's just, you know, it's trying to make a living the hard way.
You alluded to,
and it isn't really doing very well.
I think we've seen social programs through to their end in Britain. It's not really a success.
Well, she said people with anxiety get benefits. Famously, the Motability, if you're bothered, if you're interested in the British political scene, read about Motability. There are people who have ADHD. There are people who have agoraphobia. Can you believe it? Who are given basically a free car, like a new, and sometimes quite nice ones, like BMWs and things.
The house.
Like, yeah, exactly. I mean, the country is extraordinarily diseased.
Of giving like any woman who had a baby, they were giving them council houses for a long time too. I think, yeah.
Certainly, they're giving council houses to Afghan refugee claimants, but particularly Afghans, because they had a special program for Afghans, and they were put ahead of British citizens, including, I think it was in Birmingham, there was a story that really sort of shamed people because the guy was a veteran. He'd fought, I think, in Afghanistan or somewhere, or Iraq, and he couldn't get it home, and it sort of drove him to suicide in the end. You know, there's so many stories like that in Britain. But they mentioned the roads, A66. That's the road that goes from the sort of northeast to the northwest of England. But the other one that Dominic Cummings, who he mentioned there, has complained Dominic Cummings complains so much about the A1, and that's like an even more important road, because that's the road, that's one of two roads that goes down the spine of England, basically, like London to Edinburgh. And for between the last sort of major city in England and then Edinburgh, so the first major city that you hit in Scotland, it's for long stretches of that, it's just single carriageway. It's a single lane road in each direction with no barrier between. You know, Jim often complains about the state of the Trans-Canada Highway. The A1 in England is just like a national humiliation, and it can't be expanded, even though it's like extremely dangerous. Lots of people die on that road, but they just can't do it because they just can't do anything, as these people say, because there's just the system is just set up to block everything, and blockers have every advantage, and you know, so the country stagnates.
Pipelines. It's uninvestable.
Exactly. It's very, very, very similar, and it makes me, you know, it causes me lots of concern that Mark Carney seems, and the Liberals in general, seem to be so fascinated with Britain. So many of them got their education there in Britain, and they're so connected to the country. And I find that really unnerving, because I feel in some ways like I've almost like came from the future, because I've come here from Britain and I've seen how bad those ideas are when they're put into practice. And now there's a lot of gullible Canadian elites who are like, yes, and the United Kingdom has done this, so we're like taking notes. And I'm just like, no, please don't do the same thing. Don't make the same mistakes they did.
Yeah, they are a bit of a crumbling empire. Beloved Christian
Empire. Not much of an empire left.
Yeah, well, that's why it's crumbled. Chrystia Freeland has been appointed as the next warden of the Rhodes House and CEO of the Rhodes Trust. She's picking up lots of things. Do you have a video of this? No.
You know, talking about Britain and being educated in Britain, that's what that is, isn't it? Rhodes. The Rhodes Scholarship is to get people from, I don't know about Canada so much. I mean, definitely there are some Canadians. I think she isn't she? But I think it was originally designed to get Americans to go to Oxford, or was it Oxford and Cambridge? Like famously, JFK was a Rhodes Scholar, wasn't he? But again, you know, do you really want to be learning anything from the British? You can learn a lot from British history.
Well, it might be good if Christian Freeland went back to school.
Can you imagine her like, teacher, professor? I'm not sure if I think she would just get kicked out.
And I think these ones are more onto our kind of jokes section. Mark Carney recommissions Theodore tugboat to meet NATO spending target. That's alluding to the coastline, trying to get into the. Yeah.
Why not?
Okay. We're at the end of the show. I've survived.
Yeah.
Parting message to the Canadians watching, Iain?
Well, since we talked so much about Britain, I'll just repeat myself and say, don't do what Britain's done. Whatever the British ruling class have done in the last 30 years, don't do it. Do the opposite of that. And then your life will be a lot better.
Well, thank you for watching The Really Big Show. We're live every weekday at 9 a.m. Support local and independent media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local,